Hey everyone, I'm back again with another episode of Toni Told Me. If you haven't subscribed, make sure you do. And FYI, in case you don't know, we're on YouTube. So please also subscribe on YouTube. Another day, another episode. We are past January. It's a very hard financial month for a lot of people. And as a result, I thought this episode should be all about finances. Fine Girls Do Finance. That's the name. Shout out to producer Nisha. Shout out producer Nisha for this name. And I think it's so fitting because we have a very fine finance extraordinaire here today. She's going to be our guest for today's episode, giving you all the tea when it comes to personal finances and leveling up when it comes to your finance goals. So make sure you stay tuned. We've got tea time with Toni coming up and obviously Sisterhood Spotlight. But before we get into that, let me give you a rundown about what I've been doing. What have I been up to, really? Oh my God. I've been obsessed with a show on telly on Sky called From.
My mum's been going on about that.
I've seen it. I haven't yet clocked in.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Everyone, please watch From. It's amazing. I won't ruin it, but it's basically, I've been binging it like I have no life. It sounds so bad. I've been moving meetings. I'm like, can we push this back an hour? Because I want to
really important to do.
Like, I want to watch From. And it's about this like, I don't want to ruin it. Because if I tell you what it's about, it's going to, basically think Lost. I don't know if you.
Yeah,
I
love
Lost. Okay,
I love
think
Lost.
Lost, but in a different setting, in like an old American town.
This is literally the way my mum described it to me.
Oh, it's amazing, and it's very mysterious. You're trying to crack the code. Why are they there? What are they doing?
Okay,
And
noted.
yeah, so my life for the past week has been watching From, barely eating, barely sleeping. It's kind of addictive. I've been having dreams about From. It's so bad, but please, if you're listening, watch From. But before we get into everything, I think it's important for our finance expert to introduce herself. So Fizz, I'm going to give the floor to you. Do you want to tell the listeners a bit about you and what you do?
Yes, I can. So my name is Fizz. I am a banking and finance professional by day. I've been in the industry for just under 8 years now. So that's like my bread and butter.
Wow.
It's no surprise that I somehow seem to really like numbers because that is my day job. And then outside of that, I'm just also crunching numbers. So I'm also the founder of Finance Matters UK. We are an online personal finance platform teaching you all things concerning your personal finances, whether it's your current self or your future financial self. But outside of that, I do have a personality, I promise.
Outside the numbers.
Yes, outside the numbers, I'm a very chill girl, homebody, but everything around the things that I'm passionate about does really all just draw back to mentoring. So outside of that, whether it's mentoring individuals on how to get into the industry
I love that.
or helping people on a financial basis one-to-one, I'm just very passionate about basically lending a hand. So that's a little bit about me.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
You're killing it, clearly.
Thank
When you were in
you.
school, I'm just curious, when you were in school, did you love maths?
Do you know what? I hated it.
Really?
That's why I asked.
So
Because
it's funny. I hated maths in school.
Interesting.
And surprisingly, I hated it because I wasn't good at it.
yeah.
That I feel like you get a confidence when you're good at stuff. And I was
Yeah.
very good at a lot of subjects. I was very good at sports. I was an athlete. So maths was an area that I just really didn't like because I was getting the C's, wasn't really up there with the top dogs. And I just really didn't enjoy it. And so I went to sixth form, completely avoided maths. I was on the path to go into nursing and the sciences.
So interesting.
Done some research, realised that was just vibes and not really my true passion. And then found myself in the finance world because I'd done a bit of research, went on insight days and stuff and really, really came to enjoy it. And so when I went to university, I decided to go on to do management and finance with business. And I don't know how I've gone from hating maths to being an accountant. But it happens.
That is actually why I asked, because I find that a lot of people who work in a certain field, if you go back years to their school life, a lot of them didn't F with the topic or the subject or adjacent in school. And that's why I asked you, because I'm a writer and I didn't like English. I didn't like reading books. I hated English literature. I thought it was so boring. And now I write for a living. And you didn't like maths.
Yeah.
And you work in finance.
It's an interesting turn of
Fascinating.
events, but I guess God has a plan and that's just what we're on.
That's it. God has a plan. I love that. So producer Nisha, she's got some dilemmas for us. We've picked out two. I figured finance episode, let's keep it in the finance realm. So Anisha, do you want to hit us with the dilemmas for this week?
I can do that indeed. So, hi Tony, to put it simply, I'm in a lot of debt, 12k to be exact, and I don't know how I'm going to get out of it. It's a combination of a loan, credit cards, and buy now, pay later stuff. What is the best way to tackle it? That sounds like a lot.
That's a lot. And I don't know the person's age, but at any age, 12k debt, when it's not tied to something like a mortgage or an asset or anything like that,
Scary.
Yeah.
it's scary.
Yes,
So
for sure.
Fizz, I'm going to pass this on to you. I feel like this is kind of out of my remit. Like 12k debt. What did they say it was a mix of, Anisha?
So credit cards,
Okay.
a loan, and buy now, pay later
And
stuff.
buy now, pay
Yes.
later stuff. How do they get out of that?
Well, I'll first off start by saying that is a very common pool of debt for an individual to have.
Really?
Credit card debt, including your buy now, pay later schemes and loans, is the most common form of debt for adults in the UK. And so they are actually like many other people across the pond. What I would say as far as clearing their debt, they need to first identify what their debt is comprised of. So they would have given us categories there as they did. But what they do need to nail down is the APR attached to their debt. So that is the annual percentage rate. And that essentially tells you the added interest that person is paying on top of the just principal amount of debt. So out of that 12,000, that individual might not have actually started off with the £12,000 owing. It might have been 8,000, but 4,000 of that is added interest. Or the £12,000 might be their principal and they've got added interest that they're not yet privy to. What you want to do is identify the highest paying APR, because that is where it's really going to attack you when you're not looking, essentially. And so they want to be looking at what they want to get rid of first. So the highest paying APR, the highest charging APR rather, so they can start making a strategy as to how they're going to approach it. There's 3 different strategies that I always speak about when it comes to clearing your debt. So one is commonly termed as the avalanche method. So that's essentially just taking the highest APR charging debt and saying, I'm going to start paying this one off first.
Okay.
And what you want to do is work down your list to ensure that you're getting rid of the most interest. So as a whole, over a period of time, your debt is cheaper than it would be if you started with the lowest interest
That
charging
makes
debt.
so much sense.
So
Exactly,
much sense.
because that is where it really does bite people, and that's a common way that credit cards become a real issue for individuals, because the APR is so high in the background and people aren't really aware of it. So that's the first strategy. The second is the snowball method. So you kind of just flip the first strategy on its head, and actually you start with the lowest interest charging debt. And the reason why some people do that is almost like a confidence boost. Sometimes you look
low-hanging
at
fruit.
exactly. You look at the
Okay.
highest interest charging debt and you think, I just can't do that. And so it's like, okay, let's start with the small fruit.
Yeah.
Let's start with what's in what we think is arm's reach, and then we go from there. You tick one off the box and it's like, okay, I can actually do this, and you work your way up.
Okay.
Another common one that I do speak to people very regularly about is consolidation method. So of those debts that individual has, they are able to bring that into one debt instead and say, actually, I don't want to
yes.
feel like I've got 3 different arrows coming at me. I'd rather just deal with one.
Yeah.
That's a very, very helpful way to attack your debt,
Yeah.
because it just takes away the burden of feeling like you've got so many different conflicting things to deal with. One thing that people can utilize to actually go through the consolidation method is a 0% balance transfer card. So many people aren't
In
familiar.
uni, I can't lie. In university, I really made the most of those
See, I never
0%
had
balance
those,
transfer.
and I'm glad I didn't, because
Yeah.
I would have
But
rinsed them.
please
You know what?
Please let us know
Those
about
are
them.
much better than having credit cards when you're not yet at a stage where you can manage a credit card efficiently.
Yeah.
So what a 0% balance transfer card will do is essentially allow you some credit to pay off the other debt,
Yeah.
and say, we're not going to charge you interest on this. Use it to pay off the debt that you've got. So now if that individual had £8,000 worth of debt and £4,000 worth of interest, they can just get rid of all of it.
Mm-hmm.
And then actually they've just got to pay off that amount on the 0% balance transfer card, so they don't have the interest to pay off.
Yeah.
That is a really helpful way for them to just get rid of their debt without the added pressure, and over time get rid of it quicker and a lot cheaper.
Yeah. But the key, though, having learned from my mistakes in my 20s, the key with those is that 0% is not a forever thing.
It's
There will be a
not.
deadline. So when they give you the 0%, it might be for like 24 months.
Exactly.
So you have 2 years to clear that debt off.
Right.
And the minute you hit that 2 years, the interest is accruing. So you need to be
Skyrocketing.
strict.
Exactly.
But I love that you gave 3 different options. So there was the avalanche, the snowball, and
Yes.
consolidation.
Yes. Correct.
I feel like it's a personality type thing, I assume.
100%. A lot to do with your finances is based on the personality that you have, the mindset that you have, how you view money and how you feel about money. And so those different options, whilst, like I said, the snowball method might not feel as logical to some. People be like, well, why wouldn't you get rid of the highest interest paying debt?
Yeah.
But for somebody with confidence issues, with those kind of the feelings that this is impossible, that might be the best place for them to start. So yes, a lot of it is to do with personality.
Yeah, because when I heard you lay all of that out, I was like, okay, if it was me, what would I do?
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah, and then I thought, okay, I'm definitely a consolidation babe.
I am, yeah.
because I'm
Yeah.
like 3 pots. Like if I was thinking about loan, credit card,
That's
and
like
then
3 different types
Yes,
of anxiety for me to
exactly.
be thinking about. I'd rather just have
Yeah.
one big one and then figure it out.
exactly. But that was fantastic. I feel like we need you on this show.
I'm
more often.
learning.
I'll be back.
Yeah, I love to hear it. You're on a roll. We have another dilemma, don't we, Anisha?
Yeah, so our second dilemma is I need help on how to request an ex to return the money he's borrowed. It's been months since the breakup and he said nothing. Woof.
Oh, wow. Okay, before we get into this dilemma, first I want to ask you about your opinion. What is your opinion on loaning money to friends or partners?
Do not lend anything you are not willing to lose.
I love that.
It's as simple as that. It's such a rocky territory.
Yeah.
And it has a massive potential to damage relationships, right? And so it's a very, very technical area where you really do want to tread carefully. And so what I suggest to people, because you never know what situation you might find yourself in.
Yeah.
It could be a friend asking for money for very good reason. It could be a family asking for money for very good reason. And if there is someone who's very empathetic and very giving, they might feel compelled to help that individual, which is not a bad thing to do at all. However, unless you're willing to lose the amount that you are lending out, I would say stay clear. So if someone says to you they need £5,000, but actually you wouldn't be prepared to lose that money, you would not be prepared to not get that £5,000 back, but in actual fact, you might be okay with losing 1,000, then maybe you meet them at that point that you're able to meet them at. But apart from that, very clear, stay away from what you wouldn't be willing to lose.
Yeah.
I love that what you said wasn't a hard no, because I often hear people said like you never loan money out.
Yeah.
And I at one point I believed it, but then I just thought life isn't like that. There have been so many
Exactly.
occasions where I've loaned money out to friends, or even now, like if my partner said to me, "Oh my God, this massive emergency happened.
Exactly.
I can't find someone stole my cards. Can you send me the XYZ?"
No
I'm not going to
questions
say,
asked.
yeah,
Yeah.
no
Exactly.
questions asked, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
But I love that you laid it out like that, because it's about whether or not, because there's a risk you might not get it back, whether or not you can manage life if that money is not returned,
Yes.
as opposed to just being unwilling to share money or lend money or whatnot. So I love that you said that. On this dilemma though, boyfriend or ex-boyfriend,
Ex-boyfriend.
he's out the picture. He's gone MIA. Pim. He's not saying a thing. What is the best way to go about that? How if it was you, how would
Yeah.
you request it?
Oh, if it was me, I'm not gonna lie, I'm calling the police.
Okay, no, I love that. The honesty. The honesty.
Let's be honest. There is a lot of situations like
I
that,
love
for
that.
example, where you want to take the high road, you want to maintain your sanity, you want to be cordial. But if you stress me beyond the stress that I can take, 999 will be on speed dial.
Bailiff's knocking on your
Honestly,
door. Like,
because I can't. I really cannot come and stress myself.
That
but
is
in a
hilarious.
first instance, I think I would try absolutely everything from messages, emails, try and get everything in a trail. So you have evidence that you've been requesting the money's owed to you.
Oh, that's a good
Also
one.
having
Smart.
evidence of the money that is owed to you. So hopefully in this situation, the person has lent money via transfer, for example, and not cash.
Cash, yeah.
Hopefully,
that's
because you want a
such a good
trail.
point.
Exactly. You want a trail of what is owed to you. And you want to kind of just rack up a load of evidence to say,
Get
this
a
is how
folder
much
for that
exactly.
evidence.
This is how much that this person owes me. This is how many times I've requested it. If you're able to, even if the person has read receipts on, to note that they've acknowledged that your message has come through, stuff you want evidence, I would go as far as reaching out to family members, friends, because one thing about if you have my money, you are going to be embarrassed about it, okay? So
yes.
people will know that you have my money.
Do you know what that reminds me of? Have you ever seen, I don't know, Anisha, if you've seen this either, but have you ever seen the debacles on Twitter when someone is owed money? Oh my God, I
Yes.
rate it so much. People will go on Twitter, now X,
Drag
they
them.
will start a whole thread on 3rd of February 2007, my ex-friend so-and-so
Yes.
asked me to borrow this amount.
Yeah, and those are the type of receipts you want, though. Because have you noticed with those debacles on Twitter, it's only after it's come out on Twitter that you see,
It
oh
gets
yes,
solved.
they've paid me now.
Yeah.
Because embarrassment, honestly,
It works.
It works.
So what I'm hearing is, one, never loan cash out,
yes.
always transfer so you have that audit trail,
Yep.
and never loan to someone who has no shame.
Yes.
Because they need to feel embarrassment when I start writing threads on Twitter asking for my money. And I guess, you know what else you could do? That you know when you send someone money and there's like a reference you could put?
Yeah.
Loan! Exclamation mark!
Yes.
Exclamation mark!
Make it
exclamation mark.
obvious.
Make it obvious.
Exactly.
Before they turn around like, it was a
It was a gift.
It was a gift. No, it was not.
That is fantastic advice. And I think so many people need to hear that, because I've heard so many stories of women in particular where they've loaned money to guys or
Yes.
they've gotten something out, like finance out in their own name for a guy.
There's a big difference between like helping someone out and them literally taking the piss out of you.
Yes.
And I feel like guys will take the piss out of you
Yes, it's so
as
true.
much as they can.
It's so true. And I'm hoping this person who submitted the dilemma gets their money back. But you heard it here first. If you write the letter and you don't get it back, if you go on socials, call the po-pos, call the bailiffs, girl, do what you need to do.
Embarrassment needs to enter the chat.
Yes,
okay?
I love that. I hope that we have answered your dilemmas successfully. If you have more dilemmas, be sure to drop us an email, or you can hit us up on Instagram. Make sure you hit us up via the @TonyToldMePod account. We're on TikTok as well, right? On TikTok. Tony@TonyToldMe.com if you want to send an email though. Now it is time for the juicy, meaty part of the show, the Sisterhood Spotlight. So first, I'm going to pick your brain
Okay.
for this part of the show because I got questions.
Okay.
A lot of questions. I want to go back to the start of your journey. I've seen your Instagram page. Producer Anisha sent it to me because producer Anisha was like, we need to get this guest on the show. We have a finance episode. She's an expert. We need her on the show. And I went on your page. I looked at it and I was like, oh my God, this is so helpful for people. What made you start that page?
Should we get real?
Yes, I love the realness. We're all about the real tea on this show. So
I often say to people that Finance Matters UK started on a random Thursday evening, and it did. After a lot of push from friends saying, you're so good at explaining this stuff, start something with it. And so pre the page, I used to maybe share gems on my personal Instagram, breakdowns as I do on my current Finance Matters UK page, but my personal Instagram, just on the whim.
Yeah.
And realize how much traction and how many questions arose from it, how many people were truly interested, how many people came forward to say, I really didn't understand this and now I do. And so on a random Thursday evening, I was like, well, might as well.
I love
Might as well.
Casually.
And that's the start of the Finance Matters UK Instagram.
Okay.
But my passion and my true tie to personal finances came much earlier than that. So my parents separated and I was 16 at the time. And so I always like to describe it as of age, kind of not of age.
Yeah,
Because
that's a good way to
at
describe
that point
it.
where you're starting to be seen as a proper adult,
Yeah.
just 2 years down the line.
Yeah.
But you're also just still 16.
You're still a baby. You're still a baby girl. Yeah.
Exactly. And so from that point, I had to get real with a lot of things because of how things had panned out.
Yeah.
And I just became very fixated on understanding how the world worked as far as money was concerned. So in my little room, doing all this research for good reason on my end, but to the human eye, to anybody else, was just like, why are we looking at that? And so that's how I just became quite knowledgeable as far as personal finances is concerned. And that followed me throughout everything. So applying for university, loading onto what's it called, UCAS.
The UCAS. Oh,
that, you know,
memories.
you're coming from a
UCAS,
single
oh my
parent
God.
household and getting to university knowing that, okay, I need to work a job whilst I'm at
Yeah.
university. And so all of those events kind of just shaped me continuously to continue to stay on top of all the things that would matter as time would go on. So I would be in first year of university, but thinking, okay, what happens when I finish university and I don't get student finance anymore? Just always thinking ahead of the ball. And so that followed me right up until graduating, and there came that time where I was just kind of sharing gems of things that I understood. Something that actually accelerated that was during university, everyone would get like an overdraft card.
Yeah.
And I remember I applied as well. I was like, oh, everyone's getting free money. and I got denied. And I was like,
what caused this?
And spoke to the bank and they were like, oh, well, you've got a bad credit score. And I was like, well, I'm not too sure why, because I haven't done anything. And so that was the first personal experience of, let's say, quote unquote, having bad finances for me. And I came to learn that I didn't have a good credit score because I had no credit history. And so there was nothing to show that I actually could be trusted with money if I was in the case where I would ask to be trusted with money. And so that in itself allowed me to look more into credit cards and stuff like that. And all the red flags were going off in my mind. I was looking at it saying, so this interest they're going to charge everyone in university who actually doesn't understand what the interest is. And I was just getting a lot more attuned with everything. And yeah, since then, Finance Matters UK has continued to do what I set out to do, quite literally help individuals understand their current and their future finances for the things that they know that matters right now, but they're just not quite ready to attack it. And also the things that will matter in the future. But again, we're not quite keen on attacking it because we know what's later down the line. And I try to bridge that gap to allow people to understand what things are, because the more you know, the more you can do.
You sound very responsible, because I'm listening to you talk about university and how like you're in first year, you're talking about like what would happen, especially financially when you finish university. You were looking into the APR of the overdraft card, etc. I was in uni getting that overdraft card, going to Miami. So when I was in university, I was very much, I was working, but don't get me wrong, I was working for the moment. I was very much living in the moment. I was working to fund university and to be able to maintain a certain lifestyle in university and have fun and enjoy. But it sounds like you are someone who is very good with planning ahead. And I wanted to ask you, actually, you've kind of touched on it. I wanted to ask whether you've always been financially savvy or whether you've ever had any financial issues. Because obviously not having a credit history, that's kind of out of our control to a degree. Like everyone has to start somewhere. I've definitely been there. I've worked to grow my credit. But there was a time after university where all those Miami trips eventually added up. And let's just say your girl had a little debt. And as a result, I had to get my life in order. And I've touched on this previously. It led to me creating a budgeting template, and I ended up selling that after it went viral on Twitter. And the sales of that actually helped me get out of the debt.
Amazing.
And it all kind of worked out for me in the end. But that debt was a result of me clearly being in my early 20s and living beyond my means. Have you always been very responsible? Have you ever had issues where you're like, oh shit, what have I done?
So I'm going to say that I'm for the most part very responsible.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah, I'm a very risk averse person, which I think definitely feeds into that. So I don't take that many risks without being calculated. And so as I've grown, I definitely have become less risk averse, but I'm still very much, I need to plan ahead. And so something that I'm always talking about, for example, you shared that in university you was going to Miami, and I think that's great. I'm not someone who's going to tell people to not enjoy themselves. Enjoy yourselves, but plan for the enjoyment. That's just how you need to do it.
That's the mistake.
And so you want to plan ahead for the life that you want to live. And that can look like going on your trips so often, but also making sure you have the funds to ensure that you're not putting yourself in any type of debt. So I would say I have actually been quite responsible for quite some time. And I think the fruits of being responsible has kept me on that path because I see how beneficial it is.
I wish I was more like you in that sense when I was younger. Do you have siblings?
I do. I'm the youngest of 3.
You're the youngest.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Wow.
You were giving me like real eldest daughter energy.
You know, everyone says that to
Everyone
me.
says
Yeah.
that. Okay, I'm glad I'm not the only one who thought that. You thought that too, Anisha?
Yeah.
Because I was listening to you and I was like, okay, I feel like you're the eldest because the youngest, the risk takers. One thing about the youngest, they be taking risks, right? So when you said that, I was like, eldest daughter. But I guess it's not always so strict.
Yeah.
What do you think is the biggest mistake that people of today, especially in our age group,
Yes.
are making when it comes to their finances?
I'm going to have to give 2.
2. Oh, I
Yeah.
love that. A bonus one.
One is quite obvious. It's the credit card thing.
Mm-hmm.
People just don't understand credit cards enough to just
Yeah.
be using it so willy-nilly. I think that is one of the biggest hurdles that people are addressing. I speak to so many individuals, and the most common dilemma that people have is their debt. And
Okay.
it typically is from credit cards because they've mismanaged it. They don't know the APR. They didn't understand the difference between making the minimum payment and the full payment. So credit cards is definitely one of the biggest areas. But the second thing is people just refusing to look at their money situation.
Oh, yes.
It is the most simplest task, yet the one thing that people will put off for so long.
Like bury
And-
their head in the sand.
Exactly.
Overwhelming, I think,
Exactly.
for a lot of people.
And I say, if you can just spend 30 minutes with yourself, pen and paper, Notion if you prefer, your iPad for the iPad girlies, have a look at how much you spend on an average month, how much you actually bring in on an average month, and just look at where your money is going every so often.
Yeah.
And that is the best place to start. But so many people aren't doing that. And I think that's their biggest downfall, because the longer you leave it, the longer you don't do that, you get into a habit of what you're currently doing. And in that could be so many bad habits that the earlier you get rid of them,
Yeah.
the better off you are. But because you're not doing that quick finance check, you're just getting set in your ways. And
Yes.
it's just a recipe for disaster later down the line.
You are so right. And my budgeting template taught me that. And that was why I created it, because
Yeah.
after Miami Gate and I was in all this debt, I felt like because I knew what the situation was, but I felt like if I don't look at my account, it would just disappear, which is really
Yeah.
crazy. I just felt like if I don't look, it doesn't exist.
Yeah.
There's I can't remember what it's called in philosophy. Is it called the paradox? What is the name of it? I forgot the name of it, but it's basically about like a cat in a box and the cat is simultaneously alive. Oh, yes. Schrodinger's cat. That's it. Thank you. Schrodinger's cat. We have our expert too in the background. I love the philosophy knowledge jumping out. Like Schrodinger's cat. And basically, the theory, I'm probably going to demolish this, but the theory that this cat exists in a box and it is simultaneously alive and dead at the same time because you cannot see inside said box.
Right.
So I felt like if I could not see inside my bank account, it was simultaneously flourishing.
I
and
mean, I
abysmal.
see the optimism.
Yeah, do you see the logic?
And it's a
I
mental
see it.
thing, isn't it?
That was it for me. It was so mental because every time I would check and I would face the reality, I would feel like rubbish.
Yeah.
Because no one caused this apart from me. I was the only person I could blame. Until one day it got so bad that I had to sit down with it, like you said, pen and paper, and really think about it. Once I got a grip on the reality of the situation, it eventually alleviated so much stress. It's like that immediate pain you don't want to feel. It's worth it because you will get to a place where you end up eradicating the debt, and then you're happy to look at your spreadsheet and be like,
Exactly.
oh my God.
I say
Yeah.
to people, trust me, it gets fun at some point.
It does.
And people think I'm just like this neek, but
Guys,
it gets
I'm
fun.
waiting for that because I've made my spreadsheet. My
In Jesus'
spreadsheet
name, it's
is
gonna
in
get coming.
operation.
It's coming.
And I love what you said about credit cards because that is so true. Just as an example, so I'm big on maximizing credit cards in the best way to suit you for your advantage, right? And I have an Amex and I love my Amex. But one thing that Miami Gate taught me, and I'm thankful for this lesson because had I not learned it when I was younger, it would have been terrible in my 30s, was to look into APR. Because as much as I love my Amex, especially my British Airways Amex, right? Because I love racking up points.
Same.
When you see me in business class, I did not pay full price,
Those points covered that.
right? Cheap as chips. When I look at the APR, it's like over 100%. So my Amex gets paid off in full every month. I cannot afford to leave a penny on there because of the APR. But had I not known, it would have been a whole different story. And it even shocks me that that's legal, like that you can place 100+% APR on a
do you
credit
know
card.
what people don't realize? When you make the minimum payment and you have that remaining that you didn't pay, if it carries over into the next month, that's getting charged interest. There's so many little nifty tricks in there that I just say to people, you need to pay it off in full and you need to have good credit card behavior, because unless you understand it, you are in for a wild ride.
Yeah.
You really are.
When I was in university, I remember a lot of my Nigerian friends, my African friends in general, Nigerian, Ghanaian, Zimbabwean, all of them, a lot of them were very anti-credit card. And you mentioned earlier that you kind of need to prove that you can be trusted with money to build your credit. So having a phone on contract is one way, having a credit card is another way. And I remember talking about the benefits of credit cards, and my friends would be like, credit cards, they're so evil, it's the devil, da, da, da. And I feel like culturally, we are made to see, often from our parents, there's sometimes a lack of financial understanding through no fault of their own, but we are made to see having debt as always being a negative. Can debt be a good thing?
Debt can be a good thing. Having a house and a mortgage is debt. It's a good debt to have.
Yeah.
And so, yes, debt can be a good thing. You just have to understand the mechanics of debt. For example, you take having a mortgage on a property, knowing that if you pay that off, if you to accelerate your payments, you have an asset at the end of this. Even whilst you have that mortgage, which is essentially a loan, your property can be appreciating, you can have rental income. So debt can definitely be good, but I definitely do agree with the sentiment, of course, that some people can see debt as just solely a negative thing, sometimes through no fault of their own, but there is a lot of understanding to be done there for you to understand how to use it to your advantage.
Yeah, that is so true. Because one thing I will do in my household with my siblings, I will flex my credit score. But that credit score only occurred because I was willing to take on debt. And I knew how to manage. Well, I eventually learned how to manage debt.
And you
to
see,
work for
it's
me.
good you mentioned that, because when I found that I had bad credit, I didn't take out a credit card. I didn't get a credit card until 2.5 years ago.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that was my first credit card 2.5 years ago.
Wow.
I've lived my life without a credit card.
That's impressive.
And I say to people, you can increase your credit score without a credit card.
Yeah.
Also, so how are some ways to do that outside of like getting a phone on contract?
Essentially, you want to show that you can make payments consistently and meet your credit responsibilities without falling short. You also want to show that you have responsible credit behavior. And so having a phone contract, having bills that you're paying for, utilities, for example.
Of
Yes, Experian does
course.
this thing now called an Experian Boost, where you can put in your details and it will actually take 12 months back data of any good credit behavior. So maybe you've been holding up your family by paying Netflix for the last year.
Yeah.
Maybe you have rental payments. It will take all this good information and boost your credit score. And the good thing is it can't affect your credit score in a negative way.
Oh, that's
And so essentially,
good.
if you are not getting a credit card to boost your credit score, you just need to show that you have good credit behavior. Stay away from buy now, pay later schemes, because it shows that you're reliant on those types of credit.
Yeah.
Yes, try and pay some bills, have a phone contract or a phone bill that's recurring, but just something that says this person is always meeting their liabilities when it falls due.
That was very helpful. That's the first time I've even heard about Experian Boost. So that's really
same
helpful,
here.
because I
Very
know a
good.
lot of people listening will be like, I don't trust myself with a credit card, but it's nice to know there are ways they can boost their credit
Yes.
without taking out a card.
And I also say to people on Experian, if you get a full credit check, it will show you what has actually affected your credit score.
Yeah.
So some people just want to run straight to a credit card, but actually the reason why your credit score is bad because you're not on your electoral register.
Oh,
So you
yes,
don't need a
that's
credit
so true.
card.
Yeah,
So
I didn't know that affects your credit score.
Yes.
Because obviously I'm from Jersey. In Jersey, we're not allowed to vote. So then I moved to the UK and it's like, you've got to be like
Registered.
Yeah. And I was
Yeah.
like, what even is this? I'd had no credit score because in Jersey, there's no such thing as credit score.
Yeah.
And then I came here and I was like, oh my God, I have to do everything from scratch.
That's such a shift.
Yeah.
A whole new system for you.
Yeah.
A whole new system.
Yeah, I learned about the electoral register it was Equifax. I used a different platform,
Fine,
and
yes.
then it came up as like a amber or
Yes,
red.
yeah.
And I was like, oh, red, what's this? And yeah, I didn't know until that point, this was about 7 years ago, that it was a thing, that being on your
Yeah.
register contributes to your credit
For sure.
score.
Yeah.
I have 2 more questions for you. The first, what would you say if you had to give advice to people watching or listening, 2 things that everybody should be doing with their money?
Okay, 1, you need to be saving. It goes without saying.
Okay.
You don't have to be saving heaps and heaps and heaps. You don't have to be saving 90% of your paycheck. You need to be saving. At the very minimum, you need to have an emergency fund.
Yeah.
So even if you don't have savings for a house just yet, you don't have savings for a wedding you might be anticipating in 10 years down the line, have an emergency fund at the very minimum 3 to 6 months of your fixed expenses. That essentially says if you weren't able to make money from tomorrow, you are still able to pay all of your bills and maintain your typical lifestyle for the next 3 to 6 months whilst you figure out your situation.
That's great advice.
That's definitely number one. Number two, and it's a little bit mundane, but one that is objective for everyone, is to just review your finances as often as you need to. For some people, that could look like reviewing it every single week. For others, it might be quarterly, and for some others, it's annually. But find what you need to be doing and review your finances however so often you need to. Reason being, back to the point that I mentioned earlier, you're better off being in a position where you know what is going on.
Yeah.
Even if it doesn't look pretty, the more you know, the more you can do about it. And trust me, if you're not looking at it, if you're trying to ignore it, it is going to look, if not the same, much worse in 5 years down the line. So have a look at your finances and as a very minimum, have some savings.
Fis, you have been an amazing guest. Do you want to let the listeners know how they can find you and where they can follow you?
Yes, of course. So you can find me on Instagram at Finance Matters UK. We post all types of gems on there via graphic images and also videos. I also yap away on TikTok because duh. And you can find me at FTMTNS. And yeah, if you want to book a one-to-one session, you can find in my link tree all the resources available to you. But yeah, you will see my face on the internet.
Lovely. We have to get you back at some point. I feel like at this rate, I need to book a one-to-one at some point.
I'm literally, I need a one-to-one.
I'm listening to you and I'm like, yeah, I need to reconsider that and reevaluate that. But you have been absolutely epic. Thank you for coming on this show.
Thank you for having me.
Listeners, I hope you have absorbed all that. I hope you have learned from that. And if you want Fis back, let us know. We'll be happy to bring it back. My cup runneth over when it comes to the finance knowledge. Like, having Fis here has been absolutely amazing. I've learned so much. I hope you guys have learned a lot of stuff too. It's been absolutely fantastic. We've come to the part of the episode where I give you my words of advice. Now, by no means am I a finance expert. I think people think I am because I had the budgeting template, and obviously I hosted a finance podcast way back when, or I was commissioned, to host a finance podcast way back when. But the truth of the matter is I'm learning every day, just as you are. So when it comes to the knowledge I share now, I think I'm going to focus less on the details and more on avoiding certain things. So there's a quote, you've probably seen it online. It's by an author named Dave Ramsey. He's also a finance expert. And the quote goes something like this: "We buy things we don't need with money we don't have to impress people we do not like."
I love that quote.
It's amazing.
Yeah,
And I feel like it hits the nail on the head
literally.
when it comes to many financial issues. For a lot of people listening, they've probably found themselves in a financial pickle because they have attempted to live beyond their means. I also feel like this is occurring more and more as a result of social media. We often see people live a certain lifestyle online and we forget that they might be in 1% or 5% of the population. It's not normal to do certain things. It is not normal to buy certain things. The average income in the UK is just under £30,000. On that income, you're not flying in a private jet. You're not buying a Hermes Birkin bag or Kelly bag. You're not eating at Michelin restaurants every weekend. You're just not. But sometimes people feel the need to buy certain things because they are trying to impress people, and often impress people, like Dave said, that they don't like. Oh, I want to flex on my haters. I want to flex on my haters. You don't like them. Don't put yourself in financial debt for them. Don't put yourself in financial debt to prove a point. So that's what I want to say to end this episode. Please do not beat yourself up if you feel like you are financially behind someone. If you feel like you don't have the money other people have. The truth of the matter is you don't know anyone's financial situation. There are lots of people online that are spending money, and yes, they have lots of money. And there are lots of people online that are spending money and they have lots of crippling debt. You don't know anyone's story. So please do not flex. Do not financially flex beyond your means. Because at the end of the day, once you have finished proving whatever point you want to prove to the people that aren't even close to you, you are going to be left to pick up those pieces alone. The financial implications rest on your shoulders, nobody else's shoulders. The people you try to impress, they're not going to help you pay off your debt. They're not going to help you pay off your loans. So please remember Dave Ramsey's words. Don't be that person. Don't buy things you don't need to impress people you don't like. As long as you can feed yourself, as long as there is a roof over your head, as long as you can get to and from work and you can spend social time with your friends, trust me when I say that is really all you need to feel fulfilled. Otherwise, you will find yourself in a constant cycle of buying things, not because you need them or you even want them, but because you're trying to impress other people, and that's no way to live. That is all from me today. I hope you loved this episode, guys. Please subscribe. If you're watching this on YouTube, hit the subscribe button now, ASAP. If you're listening to this via headphones, via a speaker, please subscribe with whoever you get your podcast from. And be sure to tune in next week. We have some more tea for you.